So before we even get to the introductions, just some quick housekeeping notes. Please keep your microphone muted unless you want to speak. Public comment is welcome, of course, and encouraged. You should be muted automatically as you come in, but then please remember to mute yourself again once you're done speaking. There's the chat feature. Ashna will be monitoring it. So please use it if you have any technical problems or also want to make any comments throughout the presentation as well. And we'll download those comments as well once we're done. As I mentioned, this presentation is being recorded, both to help us with our notes and also to share with you so that you can share with other people who aren't able to make it today but are interested in this project. So let's move on then. Our agenda today, we will be quickly going over background and introductions, a quick overview of what we've done with the Walkable Community Workshop, and then the bulk of this presentation is the discussion of the recommendations that we plan on putting into our final report. So these are the draft recommendations, and we still want your feedback because there's time to change them and adjust them to make sure the final report says exactly what you all want it to say. So some quick background. This project was funded by the NJTPA and is being implemented in partnership with Sustainable Jersey and the Voorhees Transportation Center. We're in the second year of the Complete Streets Technical Assistance projects, and we're currently assisting 8 municipalities, including West Orange. So I'd like to go ahead and introduce our partners at NJTPA. We have Peter and Keith on the line. Would you guys want to say hello?
Hi, this is Peter Bilton, the principal planner and project manager for this project at the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority. We're the federally designated metropolitan planning organization for Northern New Jersey, which means we help guide investments in transportation, working with partner agencies at the state, as well as support planning projects like this one.
Great, thanks, Peter. Keith is on too, right?
Yeah, so I'm just here to support. Peter and I are co-managing the program, and Peter is the main on this particular project, but I'm here to lend support wherever I can.
Thanks, Keith. Anne, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sorry, I was muted. Hi, everyone. Anne Heasley from Sustainable Jersey, helping to facilitate this project. And you've all gotten emails from me, and you'll continue to get emails from me throughout the course of the project. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Anne. We also have Ashna here today. Ashna?
Hi, this is Ashna Jain. I'm from the Voorhees Transportation Center, and I'll be mostly listening today.
Great, thanks, Ashna. And she'll also be monitoring the chat for us. And speaking of chat, if the rest of you can please put your name and affiliation into the chat box to let us know who you are, and also if you'd like to mention how often you walk around the study area. We do have one person on the phone. Was it Leonard, I believe? If you want to introduce yourself by phone, if you don't have access to the chat.
I have access to the chat.
Oh, great. Thank you. I'll give you all just a few more seconds to go ahead and put that in the chat box. All right, so we have Mike Dannemiller, who is a resident of West Orange, shops in the area weekly. Brad Squires is in the area every day from the West Orange PD, Police Department, I presume. Joseph Fagan, the West Orange Town Historian and the Public Information Officer. Bill Rutherford, a 19-year resident, current candidate for the West Orange Town Council, and was in the area today with Melinda Huerta. I think we have a couple more people, right? All right, so if those of you who are missing can go ahead and fill that out, I'm just gonna move on so we can get to the good part. So just as a reminder, the walk audit was conducted virtually back in July on the 29th. During that walk audit, participants learned about the Complete Streets improvements, and then we virtually toured the corridor using Google Street View. The study area includes Washington Street from Meade Street up towards Main Street, then a short section of Main Street, followed by a small portion of Franklin Avenue ending at William Street. Both Washington Street and Main Street are county roadways, so any changes that this plan will propose have to be done in coordination with the county. The school is also a centerpiece of this, Washington School, so it's important to get the school community involved as well. We had a great conversation during that audit about current issues along these roads, and we discussed a number of ideas for improving safety. We also received a number of comments through the audit form and direct emails, and we tried to incorporate those as well. And as I mentioned, this is another opportunity to provide your feedback. So we're going to start by looking at our recommendations for Washington Street from Meade Street up to Columbia Street. We're going to talk about this section sort of as one because the issues we observed were pretty consistent along every block. The report is going to break them out on a block by block basis, but just for today, we're not going to do that because of time. And while the sidewalk does vary in width on a block by block basis, it's generally, this is what the road layout looks like. One driving lane in each direction, 12 feet wide, parking lanes, and then a sidewalk, which does narrow to 4 feet in some sections. So the first issue that we heard during the walk audit was related to vehicle speeding and some confusion about parking. So currently there's no speed limit signs along the corridor. It's not clear actually if the speed limit is 25, 30, or 35 miles per hour. So we propose adding signage, of course, to make it clear to drivers what that speed limit is. We also observed illegal parking along the corridor. In some cases, this illegal parking was caused by missing or confusing signage. For example, this no stopping sign, like in the picture, has no corresponding endpoint. So that vehicle, the ones you see in the background, it's not actually clear if they're parked illegally or if a sign is missing. In some cases, illegally parked vehicles can block visibility, creating a dangerous situation. So that's why it's important to address these parking issues. Aside from reviewing and updating the signage, we propose clearly defining parking spaces using striping. This has the added effect of visually narrowing the roadway when no vehicles are parked, such as in this photo when there's no vehicles there. This is in Newark. And doing that can help lower vehicle speeds a little bit. Additionally, by clearly marking the no parking areas, you can prevent some illegal behavior. And as an added benefit, you also avoid angry residents who think they were ticketed by mistake because it's really crystal clear where you can and cannot park. And I did see a couple people join us after we started, including one right now. We've only just started the main part of the presentation, so you haven't really missed anything. But please do use the chat box to let us know who you are, your name, your affiliation with West Orange, and how often you visit the study area. Ashna, do we have any chat comments so far?
No comments. We just have more introduction chat. Jerry Guardino, sorry if I said your name wrong, Councilman West Orange, and he says that please note that this is not a campaign event. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have Beverly Riley, lives in the St. Cloud area, 45-year resident, a walker, a volunteer in West Orange at the zoo and senior garden, master gardener. And we have Latoya Howard from Easy Rides Bike and Pet Team. And we have Lisa Lee, Easy Ride, works on safe routes to school with West Orange and has done 2 walk audits there. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Ashna, and thank you all for joining us. I see a couple more people are coming in.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, for those of you who just joined, if you could please introduce yourselves in the chat box, and we've only really just started, so you haven't missed much. But I am going to continue moving on. All right, so continuing on with the concerns about speeding, parking, and signage, parking next to corners is illegal in New Jersey because it blocks sight lines and can make it difficult for large vehicles to make turns. So aside from striping the no parking areas, we also suggest adding physical deterrents at some intersections. These can include soft-hit bollards, especially in areas where trucks might be turning. But in other cases, this provides an opportunity to add bicycle parking, which is missing along the corridor. Along a lot of the corridor, the sidewalk is pretty narrow and might not be a good idea to add bicycle parking on the sidewalk. So adding it on the roadway can be a great way to support local businesses. You're adding a new parking option. And again, you're making sure people aren't parking illegally or too close to the crosswalk, like on the picture on the left. Even though in that case, there is no signage. So again, that's an issue where there's some confusion because there's no signage letting them know what the state law is related to parking near intersections. All right, so crosswalks. Currently, marked crosswalks exist only at the signalized crosswalks, the ones with traffic signals. However, under New Jersey law, every intersection has crosswalks, and few people are willing to go well out of their way to cross the street. For example, between Washington Street and Main Street, there are 4 intersections without crosswalks, creating a distance of about 1,200 feet between them. So people have to go all the way one way and then come back. And the reality is most people don't do that. They're just going to cross in the middle. That's why we propose adding high visibility crosswalks along the route, especially at 4-way intersections, such as the pictured one at Washington and Columbia. And of course, the report is going to recommend that all the ramps at these crosswalks should meet American with Disabilities Act or ADA standards for accessibility. I did notice when I visited that a couple of locations were very recently upgraded, so that's great to see. So here's an example of how the intersection of Washington Street and Columbia Street could look with the curb extensions, high visibility sidewalks, and added signage to inform drivers that these crosswalks are here. So again, adding these curb extensions prevents illegal parking, gives pedestrians a little more room, creates enhanced visibility when crossing the street, and the crosswalk markings make it crystal clear to drivers that pedestrians are expected here. These curb extensions can be completed at a low cost in the short term to test them out using only paint and bollards. So that's one way to get started very quickly. But of course, in the long term, you really want to see these built out using concrete. And we recommend that the town and the county develop a standard design for these curb extensions to maintain a consistent look along the corridor. So aside from improving safety, they can be an excellent opportunity to add greenery and stormwater retention. These can be very helpful after a big storm to prevent local flooding in built-up areas, such as this neighborhood. And the added greenery can be aesthetically pleasing and enhance the neighborhood appeal. So like in that center image, you have those plants, but they're also, they can be built in such a way to capture the stormwater and really create a good asset for the infrastructure in the community. Ashna, do we have any questions so far in the chat or any raised hands?
No.
Okay, great.
Looks beautiful.
Great, thank you. So in terms of comfort, it's important to think about comfort when we talk about walkability, and comfort can be tied to aesthetics and safety. Currently, there are very few trees along the corridor. That makes walking very hot in the sun and makes the corridor look neglected. When I was visiting, it was a very hot day and I was really sweating. So aside from replacing the trees that have been removed, such as in this picture, where it looks like there used to be a tree, but it's no longer there, we recommend finding new places to add greenery along the corridor. As the sidewalk is very narrow, the best place for these trees might even be in the parking area, and I'll show you a picture of that in a second. Additionally, when it comes to comfort and safety, our report is going to recommend pedestrian-focused lighting along the corridor. I visited during the day, but it did seem like the lights are placed pretty far apart. So additional lighting can be helpful, both for traffic safety, but also personal safety. So here
we have a question from Joseph Fagan on curb extensions and how do they affect snow plowing?
So I don't know if this image is better or the other one, but basically the curb extension is going to be built into the parking area. So in a lot of ways, it's like if the cars were parked there anyway. And in the snowplows can actually use this this extended sidewalk area to dump some of the snow, as long as they're not doing it into the crosswalk ramps. So it shouldn't be too much of a problem. They need to know it's there, of course, so it might involve some training, especially if it's brand new, but usually it's pretty clear to them what the new curb line is. And as you see from this photo or the image on the left, the way vehicles actually make the turn anyway, there's plenty of room for them to do it around where that curb extension would be because of how the radius is. Hopefully that answers the question. Any other questions, Ashna?
No other questions. We have a comment from Mike Dana Miller that curb extensions do need some kind of vertical element, like a sign, so plow operators have something to cue off while it's snowing.
Yep. Great. Thanks, Mike, for that. And yes, definitely some signage can be added as well for them to know it's there if it's all buried under the snow. So in terms of going back to the trees, just these are examples of how trees can be added into the roadway if the sidewalk is too narrow to support trees. So the image on the left is from downtown Houston, Texas, and the image on the right is in the Netherlands. So in the rightmost image, they're doing like mini curb extensions to divide these parking spaces. While in the Houston example, they're doing it directly onto the roadbed itself. But in both cases, it's actually not taking away that much parking. It's really delineating what the parking spaces should be. And that's, you know, a good opportunity if the sidewalk is too narrow, which is the case in a lot of sections of this corridor. So in terms of comfort and transit, comfort and accessibility can sometimes go hand in hand. So in our report, we're going to point out bus stops that need to be modified to be wheelchair accessible, such as this one, where the sidewalk is sloped steeply towards the roadway. So in this case, this old curb cut needs to be either removed, or the bus stop should be located to provide a flat surface for people boarding the bus. And once a flat surface is provided, then it's great to provide a shelter, such as this one, which is already in West Orange, further down Main Street, I believe. Can encourage transit use and provide people with a place to sit for a minute if they're walking the corridor, especially the elderly who sometimes just need to sit down as they go about their day. In terms of bicycling, there's no bicycle infrastructure along the corridor today. Adding bicycle lanes can be done, but doing so would require the removal of parking along one side of the roadway. So that's the trade-off there, just because right now there's not enough space to accommodate travel lanes and parking and bike lanes. Shared lanes do not really encourage new people to bicycle, but when added can help educate motorists and bicyclists on where bicycling should be done. So for example, on the image on the left, I observed this bicyclist riding the wrong way, and arrows can help clarify to them that they should be, following these clear arrows and positioning themselves away from parked cars. So if there's no appetite to remove the parking, then arrows are sort of the next best option. Again, with the disclaimer that, you're not really going to get kids biking along a road like this with arrows. It's really only going to help the existing bicyclists, but of course, improving safety is great, even if you're not increasing the amount of people bicycling. All right, so we're going to get to Main Street next. Any other questions about the Washington Street section? And again, for those who missed the early part, the report itself is going to talk more on a block-to-block basis about some of the very site-specific issues. But the corridor itself is pretty uniform in terms of issues encountered. Any questions or comments?
No questions or raised hands. Mike Dana Miller says great detail.
All right, perfect. All right, so Main Street. This section of Main Street is really two intersections in very close proximity. And because they really need to be treated as one project just because of how close to each other and the way sort of they control the traffic. So here's a look at them from above. Washington Street is that bottom street feeding up towards Main Street to Franklin on the top right. The school is that big building on the right side of the screen, and you have the shops on the left side of the screen. So the issues observed here included or mentioned in the walk audit included illegal loading and unloading at school drop-off time causing congestion. Obviously, I wasn't able to see this in person, but a few people did mention this during our virtual walking tour as a serious issue here. We also have missing crosswalks. So there's two locations where there are no crosswalks, but they're still part of the intersection where people might want to turn. And there's also missing turning options. So people cannot make these left turns that are indicated, which could add vehicle miles traveled just because sort of people have to go further out of their way, or potentially people might be making these illegal turns, although I didn't observe that happening. So we came up with 3 different alternatives for the area that can address some or all of these issues. And in all these images, it's going to be the same on the left and the right. The only difference is that the left has the satellite in the background, and the right, we removed it just so it's a little clearer what's going on, but you're looking at the same picture. So this is option 1, and it's the most basic option, the lowest cost, least change, which maintains the intersection pretty much as is, but expands sidewalks and medians where feasible using curb extensions. And these curb extensions could be painted curb extensions or permanent curb extensions. But the idea is to help to give pedestrians a little more space and to slow down vehicles making these turns. So the end result overall is just, a little more space for pedestrians, but the intersection itself would continue to function very similarly as it does today, but hopefully with some improvement. So any questions sort of about this minor improvement option or alternative one? Okay, so we're gonna move. Oh, I do see the chat box lighting up. Anything there?
We have Jerry's comments that a lot of what we are showing will be addressed with the start of our Main Street road diet.
Great, thanks, Jerry. And yeah, the intention, my understanding from the last meeting is that that road diet ends prior to arriving here. So this would be a way to sort of continue that up a little bit. Hopefully.
Mike Denamiller has a question that would there be traffic control on the new crosswalks?
Mike, we're not sure on that. It would likely have to be part of the way that it's signaled. So yes, it would have to be added in there or not have those crosswalks. But Mike, just as a clarification, or Jerry, I am correct that the road diet does not include this area, right? It ends right before.
If I can say something, the road diet includes predominantly, Main Street all the way up past the first phase to Edison Middle School, but it will impact Washington because then eventually we can take the walkability suggestions and tie it in to the rest of the downtown corridor. So what we do on Main Street, and as that progresses along, we can probably try to get the county to work with us to go down to Main Street, down to Washington corridor.
Got it, thanks. All right, so let's look at option 2, which is a bigger reimagining of this intersection. And this is a more capital intensive process where basically you reduce the road space by creating a more traditional intersection with 90-degree turns. And this is accomplished by removing the slip lanes. So this adds a lot more room for pedestrians. It makes it easier to allow left turn from Washington onto Main if that's something that's desired, and allows straight movement from Llewellyn. Again, if right now that's a right turn only, and that could be added. It also easily allows to add those missing crosswalks. This is, again, a more capital intensive one, but it does create a very standard intersection design and gives a lot more room for pedestrians and without confusing anybody into what's going on here. Any questions as to alternative 2?
No questions.
Okay. So for alternative 3, we thought, could we reimagine this entire area? Again, a more capital intensive process. What would it look like as roundabouts instead of as as just traffic signals? So a little bit about roundabouts. In some situations, roundabouts can help all road users. By eliminating traffic signals, they can create an even flow of traffic, removing delays, but this is only really if the traffic movement is balanced in all directions. It also allows traffic movements in all directions, allowing those left turns. For pedestrians, it also means no longer waiting for a traffic signal. So for this exercise, we envisioned a roundabout with just one lane in each direction because that's the safest version for pedestrians. Larger roundabouts with 2 lanes, which handle more traffic, can create very dangerous situations when one lane of traffic stops for pedestrian and the other one does not. So that's the way it sort of improves mobility for pedestrians and for motorists. And for the town itself, a roundabout can create a new area for greenway or art, since you have that sort of centerpiece there. Some towns put in even a fountain. So the roundabout concept does add sidewalk space in front of the businesses. Might be a little hard to see here, but it does create a sidewalk extension there, but requires taking space away from the school in that right corner there, Torrey's Corner, and would require relocating the existing granite monument at that location. So that's a consideration as well. Now for this exercise, we look to see how a roundabout would fit, and that's it. And the design is based on a 40-foot long NJ Transit bus and a fire truck, since we do have the fire station blocked down and they do come through this intersection frequently. So this roundabout was imagined, can a 40-foot bus and a 36-foot long fire truck make these turns? And yes, they can. That being said, this is just sort of a visioning thing. A roundabout would require a full traffic study to understand if a one-lane model could manage existing traffic volumes. It would also have to be designed by an engineer using full county and state standards. And so basically, if the group is actually interested in seeing this roundabout concept in the report itself would only show this. We'd make it a little prettier, make it a little clearer, but the recommendation would be to do a full study on it, since we're not able to do that within the scope of this project. And it's entirely possible that this full traffic study could find that it wouldn't work at all. So there's no guarantees, but it does create, but it does mostly fit, again, with taking a little bit of room away from the school on those corners and moving that granite monument. And in turn, you're getting added pedestrian space on all intersections, on all corners, and also a more free flow of vehicles. At least when I was there, I noticed the traffic signals lasted a really long time. Obviously, traffic volumes are a little different now with COVID, but it seemed like they were giving red lights for everybody at the same time, including pedestrians, and no one was moving. And something like this would result in a more continuous flow of traffic. But again, without the full traffic study, we can't really say if it would work. Any questions or comments about the roundabout concept?
Yeah, we have a question from Lisa Lee. So does the design not include any bike lanes, and are you suggesting shadows? Or if there is a road diet, will there be bike lanes?
So Lisa, at least for the Washington Avenue portion, adding bike lanes would require removing parking from one side of the roadway, which we are happy to endorse if that's something the town would like to see in the plan. But if the parking needs to be maintained, then it can really only accommodate sharrows, at which point that would continue through here. Usually best practice in a roundabout is to provide bicyclists with the option of either continuing in the lane or to enter the sidewalk and navigate it as a pedestrian. So we would encourage following that standard and building ramps so that bicyclists do have the choice of how they want to handle navigating it. But there wouldn't be any bike lanes built into the roundabout itself.
Yeah, Lisa Lee saying, adding on to her comment that it's a grade K-8 school and kids like to bike here.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually after this, we do, as I get to the next section, we're going to talk about a different alternative to accommodating bicyclists, giving them a second option because of those limitations on both Main Street and Washington Street.
Yeah, Jerry adds that they were informed that the roadway is not wide enough for bike lanes according to federal guidelines.
Right, only you would have to remove the parking on one side, which would give you an extra 8 feet, which would allow 2 5-foot bike lanes, one in each direction. But yeah, it would require removing that parking.
Melinda has a question on when will the traffic study be made available? So
for this report, we would only recommend a traffic study be done. This is a very small budget report so really the municipality and the county would have to go on to the next step of doing a full traffic study. And we can only recommend it be done if that's something you want to see in the report.
Susan asked earlier that are there any NJDPA grant funding applications that might help offset the recommended upgrades?
Yeah, definitely. And there's actually a big funding opportunity available, which is due November 24th, I believe, which is the TAP grant, Transportation Alternatives Program. And that is specifically designed for municipalities looking to improve non-automotive transportation, and that can include streetscape improvements. That grant also includes some design assistance. So the municipality is definitely encouraged to apply for that. Even, if you have other projects around town, there was a webinar earlier today about that, which is available online. And I think they have another one next week, but it's only offered every 2 years. So I definitely encourage West Orange to apply for this grant, and it allows for larger ones. We're talking $1 million plus, which would cover something like this. So definitely apply for that.
Thank you.
And if you have any more questions about grants towards the end, we could bring the NJTPA people back off mute, and they might be able to help answer some grant specific questions as well, since they're the ones that help allocate federal funding. Oh yeah, and also this is a school as well. Safe Routes to School funding, they're expecting that to go out later this year. It hasn't been announced yet, but that's definitely something not to miss out on as well for West Orange.
Melinda has another comment that Washington Elementary School has a retaining wall issue that requires at least a $1 million investment. And would it be possible to create a kiss and go lane similar to that of Gregory School there?
So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the school specifically on the next slide, but we did not imagine like a specific kiss and go area, but that's something we can talk about in detail a little bit more at what some of those options are, since school drop off was such a big issue talked about in the first presentation.
Yeah, and Tory Corner noted before we started the intersection discussion that he has observed on many occasions that bicyclists completely disregard traffic regulations.
Yep, and I definitely saw 2 or 3 biking the wrong way. That's definitely an education issue, and adding, you know, the appropriate sharrows, signage, that kind of stuff. That's one way to address it. And of course, working with the school as well and the TMA to make sure the kids know how to bike, you know, on the street. Especially, I know there's a large immigrant community around here, and sort of standard practice in other countries is not the same in the US. In the US, you know, you bike with traffic always as a bicyclist. Some countries still educate people to bike against it, which is what we do here with pedestrians. We tell pedestrians if there's no sidewalk, walk against traffic, and sort of people see it as bicycling should be done the same way. That's not how we do it anymore, but that's certainly where a lot of this confusion might come from.
Sandra Mordecai, who is a former Board of Ed member and PSAB liaison for BOE, says that Washington School now also has a pre-K classes. So it's pre-K to 5. And like she agrees with kids riding bikes along that corridor.
Okay, so why don't we move on to sort of talk about the school and the bike specifically, just, you know, since that seems to be a popular conversation, but just for reference, this is what a roundabout looks like in an urban area. This is one along New Jersey State Route 322. So this is NJDOT in Glassboro. It was built within the last 10 or 15 years. So just when you think of a roundabout, I want to make sure no one's thinking about like the old Jersey traffic circles you get out by the highway. It's really something built more to a pedestrian scale where pedestrians can easily cross the crosswalk and get drivers to stop, you know, in a safe manner. So just keep that in mind when we talk about a roundabout. So school drop-off, since that seems to be a hot topic, it's one of the issues that came up over and over again. And these concerns included congestion, included kids crossing mid-block, a whole bunch of issues related to that. So unfortunately, we weren't able to see that in person because of the current restrictions, but we tried to take as much as we could from our previous conversation. So one of the things that really interested me is that the school has a pretty small catchment area. So as you see from this map, which is on the school district website, the Washington School only draws from the immediate area compared to some of the other elementary schools like the St. Cloud School. And one of the questions really is, you know, why are kids being dropped off in the first place if they all live so close by? And encouraging people to walk and bike to school is obviously an important issue in getting people out of their cars. And it has to be done using 2 approaches. So first, the infrastructure has to be upgraded so people feel safer walking and bicycling. Someone can live, you know, 10 feet away, but if the parent doesn't feel safe, they're going to drive their kid 10 feet, you know, if there's no sidewalk. So it's important to get the infrastructure in place, which is what a lot of our recommendations are intended to do. And once the infrastructure exists, then the school, the TMA can help educate the students and parents on the best ways to arrive using a car. And that's some of the stuff that's already being done, like bicycle rodeos, and some of the stuff that can be organized through the parent groups, including like a bicycle school bus and so on. So that's like, if you don't feel comfortable with your kid biking alone, they would be picked up by a school bus of bikes, which is basically, you know, a parent leading 10 kids on a bike and they all ride together. But again, that can only work if the infrastructure is really in place. So as we talked about, both Washington Street and Main Street can be made and hopefully will be made safer and more comfortable for pedestrians, but it's a challenge to make it comfortable for bicycling because of the space limitations. You know, sharrows is really not something a second grade kid is going to be using. Likewise with Main Street, even if a standard bike lane is added, it's still a lot of traffic. It can still be a scary experience. So one way to create an alternative bicycle route is getting them off those main streets into a secondary road. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a grid system here, so it doesn't quite parallel it, but the school does have a rear entrance seen here, which can really be the focal point of a bicycle boulevard network. So, you know, getting the kids on bikes to use this rear entrance is a great way to enhance that corridor, and they can access through here. So what's a bicycle boulevard? A bicycle boulevard uses a number of tools to prioritize bikes and pedestrians. It's done by lowering the speed limit, installing traffic calming measures, installing signage, and really preventing cut-through vehicle traffic from using this roadway. So the specific tools we would propose is a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit, signage and pavement markings, mini traffic circles at some intersections, and potentially speed bumps and also turning restrictions if it's found that a lot of traffic are using these side streets to get away from congestion on Main Street. So really what you want to do is make sure that residents can drive to their house, but you don't want anyone else going through there. And this is just a quick example of what a mini traffic circle looks like, which is very different from a roundabout. The example on the left is a temporary one that was installed as a test in Denver. They were worried about the snow and they wanted to see how it would work with the plows. So they put it up like that. And the image on the right is in Seattle, where they're very common. And you know, it adds some good greenery to the neighborhood. So this is sort of one way to make sure every intersection outside of the main street, the cars are going much slower and they're yielding to bicyclists. So we don't have any specific designs to show for this route right now. Oh, I'm sorry, that's incorrect. But I wanted to get sort of your thoughts on this first. If you all felt that sort of a bicycle boulevard treatment like this is the way to go for this report. Do we have any thoughts on that? Like, do you guys think this is a better idea than trying to get bikes on Washington and Main Street?
Cindy Brown loves that idea. Yeah. And Melinda agreed that infrastructure is an issue and a big concern, that parents don't feel safe allowing their children to walk in this area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, I don't have any specific like renderings or anything to what this would look like, but this would actually also tie with the middle school as well. So it would help kids going to the middle school, not just the elementary school. But if this is something you all like, then we'll make sure it's in the final report as something to move forward to for the biking with kids. And that reminds me, there's talk about more of a drop-off area. And while we can sort of think about a way to sort of build in a more permanent drop-off area, I personally feel because of the small catchment area, it's a better solution to encourage as many as possible to walk and bike. But if you all feel that it's better to have looking at more of a drop-off, we can try to do that as well.
Melinda is saying that she thinks families would be very happy to have a safe bike lane. Lisa Lee thinks that bicycle boulevard would be a great idea. And Melinda also asks for like a secure bicycle parking space, which would be very important.
Okay. Yes, so bike parking is very important, not just for the school, but also other destinations. So we mentioned the bike corrals for the businesses. A lot of people don't bike because they're worried their bike will get stolen. So having safe bike parking, and we can include some standards of what bike parking should look like. A lot of schools use sort of that old style grid bike racks, which they don't even work for bikes. Like no one knows who designed them because they don't make sense. You need to have something to lock your frame onto. So we would encourage the school to work, working with the school district to get safe bike parking installed.
Cindy thinks that mini roundabouts is a great option to slow down the traffic, and it'll give them more opportunities to grow their tree canopy.
Great. Okay, so that's it in terms of our recommendations for today. As I said, they'll be block by block in the report, but I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. or there's something in here that you think is a bad idea and shouldn't be in the report at all. So does anyone have any comment on something they really want to see added or removed? Or any comments about the 3 alternatives for the main intersection in terms of, do we want to have all 3 of these in the report, or do we want to limit it down to sort of 1? Our thought process was sort of having like a short-term improvements versus a longer-term improvement. And we can keep that, or we can really push to 1 if you all think that's, a better way to move forward. Oh, I do see a question sent to me by Leonard about pedestrian street lighting. And yes, definitely, that's important. And our recommendation will be to add pedestrian-focused lighting that does not, that's really focused on the sidewalk. So you're not shining it into any houses, and it's not creating a nuisance, but it is really increasing safety for pedestrians, both on the sidewalk and at intersections. You're all so quiet today. I felt like you were all more chatty on our last meeting.
Might be the time of day.
Maybe. I have the webcams hidden away so I can see my screen, so I can't see what the reactions are.
Quiet because these actually seem like upgrades that we can do if we had the financing to do them. Like they all look very interesting and to be taken into consideration.
Thank you. I do see from Mike about the first one. And yeah, the idea is narrowing as much as possible using paint and temporary materials just to get that intersection as safe as possible quickly at a low cost. So that's the idea with the first concept. So maybe if, for example, you do want to move forward with one of the second or third concepts, you could still do this in the short term because, getting that money and the grant and the capital improvement, it does take years. And you don't want to wait with an unsafe intersection years while that comes through. Okay, I see a comment about, yeah, so definitely, I can't guarantee the roundabout will work. So it's definitely something that needs more study. So there definitely can be some concern there, but what's interesting is it fits pretty well. And that was really the idea here. Like, is it even in the realm of possibility? And the answer is yes, maybe. Lisa Lee mentioned a kiss and ride lot, best 2 to 3 blocks away from school, not right in front of. And yes, definitely. So one of the things that we were thinking about when looking at sort of where a kiss and ride lot would mean is like the catchment area. Where are people driving from, which is why I pulled up this map. Now surprised by the idea that they're not coming from that far away. So, if you're putting a kiss and ride lot like 2 to 3 blocks away, that's almost at their house, which is sort of funny, which is why we definitely want to encourage them to walk as much as possible. But some of the people coming up Main Street, I can definitely see there's this random little corner by the St. Cloud where it looks like some of the kids are coming from. I could sort of see why they'd want to drive. So it would definitely make sense to try to get them to drop off a little further from school, but maybe somewhere down Main Street.
Well, if you had a bike boulevard too, that would be the safest approach for the kids to walk on along too, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So a bike boulevard, even though the name says bikes, it enhances safety for everybody by lowering the speed limits and getting the cars off this road. So it's definitely much more pleasant for the kids to walk on as well. So Mike asked if there's a northbound chicane. And yes, so even on this like traditional 90-degree intersection option, right now it's sort of 2 lanes here, but not really, it's not striped. And so the idea is to have it as 1 lane, slowing drivers down a little by adding this curve. And it came from the roundabout, but it can even work without a roundabout as well. So yeah, definitely. I know, so Melinda said she's concerned the roundabout would make it less walkable. And I mean, a dedicated signal is, in most cases, is safer for pedestrians. In a roundabout, presumably they'd still have crossing guards there to help out. But yeah, a lot of it depends on, educating the drivers and some enforcement, making sure they're stopping for pedestrians in the crosswalk. Leonard sent me a message asking if the bike boulevard prohibits parking on the street. No, so the bike boulevard is still open for local area residents. They can still drive there, but it's really attempted to discourage non-residents from using it as a cut through. Okay, and then Mike has a question about the roundabout. Can we clarify curb versus paint edge changes? Sure, I even have a slide for you, Mike. I thought you might ask something like that. So here's an example of that roundabout in here in New Jersey in an urban area, showing that even a very large vehicle like this truck can make it through. So that center area, the first part, you can see is concrete. It's not intended for people to drive on, but it allows a larger vehicle like this truck, those real wheels, to go on it. And you can see this island as well is sort of mountable to allow these large vehicles to go through. But everyone else still goes sort of a long way on the asphalt. So that's, so that's sort of what we're showing on here. When you see there's that dark circle, that would be like the planted area, trees, a fountain, whatever. And then that larger, lighter circle, that's concrete. You're not supposed to drive on it, but larger vehicles like a fire truck can as they make that turn.
I understand why you would want a fire truck to go through Main Street, but I wonder, does your town have any kind of ordinance or policy to discourage like those really humongous trucks from driving through your Main Street area? Seems not safe to me.
So I don't know if they do, but for here, we definitely wanted to make sure the NJ Transit buses are able to do it. So there's two bus routes. One goes up Main Street. So they would be passing through both of these, and we want to make sure they can continue to do this. And the other one, which comes less frequent, comes up Washington, then makes a right on Main Street as well. So that was really the intention, making sure those transit buses can continue to do it.
County Road.
And yep, Leonard mentioned in the comments as well that the roundabout does allow current movement, which are prohibited. So especially like Llewellyn Street up here on the top left, they can only turn right now. With a roundabout, residents would be able to go any way they want. So that adds a little grade to them. But it is a county road, so yeah, it would have to go through county standards. It's possible the county standards might require something wider. Hopefully that's not the case. And as I said, we definitely would not recommend a 2-lane roundabout under any circumstance. The more compact, the better for pedestrians. So, if someone ends up saying you got to put in a massive thing here, then I would suggest sticking with a standard intersection. You wouldn't want that. All right, so if we don't have any questions or comments, we're done a little early.
I have a quick question, actually. I'm not sure if they ever asked, but is there a difference between the pricing of the 3 options and what would be, the most affordable for the town? I'm surprised they didn't ask.
So the most affordable is definitely the first one, especially since you can do a lot of this using just paint almost immediately. So again, the idea here is just sort of to narrow sort of those ambiguous areas. Can you guys see my mouse? I'm actually not sure if you can. No?
No.
Yeah.
No,
If I can say something, the road diet has 1 lane each way. So Main Street will be going from the 2 lanes each way to 1 lane each way. That'll assist with this.
Yes, so we definitely kept it as 1 lane since we knew that was going to happen. Sorry, I'm trying to get you to see my mouse, but I'm not seeing the option. But basically,
sorry, James, I think I've disabled that option.
Oh, is that why? Okay, no problem. But so, we heard that some people are dropping off kids on the right corner of Washington and Main there, even they're not allowed to. So by physically reducing that, you make it impossible for them to do so using sort of the paint and plastic bollards. So that's the cheapest option, but it can be made permanent by making that you can definitely widen this island here. I mean, you see how wide that lane is right now? It's supposed to be for one car, but it definitely fits two. And if it fits two cars are going to place themselves there. So by narrowing that down, you remove that. So that's the lowest cost option. In terms of alternative 2 and 3, which one costs more? Honestly, we could not say. I don't know. The roundabout requires taking some space from the school away, reconfiguring that whole edge. But there's no traffic signal, and traffic signals can be expensive. If you're reconfiguring the intersection like option 2, you would want to put in new modern signals, which the county would want to do anyway. The ones there are pretty old, but signals can be pricey.
I have a comment with that. With you're saying that it would have to cut into the school, in that edge where Franklin Avenue. That's where the retaining wall issue, I believe, is with the school, and it's something that it's an issue that has been but tried to be budgeted, has been overlooked because of the budgeting issues. It's become a very expensive project, and I'm just wondering how can we kind of like kill two birds with one stone here, and is there a way that we can work in conjunction with the Board of Ed possibly, or with the funds that are available for the Board of Ed for the retaining wall and the town? Or is there a way that I think that would make the most amount of sense to be able to make it safe for the students and make the roads wider or safer?
Yeah, definitely.
I oftentimes on Franklin Avenue, one of the conversations with the Board of Ed with Dr. Cascone is that there is a back entrance further down on Franklin Avenue. On the screen, if you go down towards the right of the roundabout, there is a back entrance to the school, which is often closed off. So students aren't even allowed to access. And then that was from a concern of safety for the school when the school had with the school shooting surveys. They had addressed that as a safety concern, which is why it was locked, and why there's not much access for it. But there is a back alleyway leading out towards where you're thinking about putting that what is it, bike skyway or bike driveway? Roadway, that bike roadway, right?
Yeah, the bicycle boulevard. Yeah.
Right. Also, right there you go. I couldn't find the words. I'm sorry. I'm like a little distracted right now with the kids and everything. And so I wonder if there was a way that we can maybe even open it up, since it has become such a big financial situation in terms of safety with the retaining wall right there along Washington. Further back. Yes, right. That whole wall leans and slopes down. And so I know that that's been something that is a concern for Washington School, and has become more expensive the longer we kind of leave it off.
Right. So I don't know if NJTPA has an answer to, if they were doing a TAP funding for the intersection, if that could include, I mean, I assume so. If you're having to sort of dig into this, they would have to replace a retaining wall, but I don't know the technicalities of that, but it would definitely make sense, like you said, to get two birds with one stone, especially if they're cutting into this a little bit anyway. And we'll definitely note in the report that, yeah, there definitely should be an entrance over here, because getting kids to walk all the way around, that's going to.
So that is the entrance. That is the entrance right there. That's an opening.
This one is open,
but so it used to be, but for safety issues, they actually don't allow it to be open anymore, which is also another thing that's been making it harder, I think, for parents, is that they can't really just let their kids go, especially if they're younger children. They will park and walk their children to the front of the school or to their school entrance point. So that was a concern of safety in terms of with the shooter. There was a shooter safety meeting or survey done at all schools in West Orange, and that was a concern that was flagged for Washington Elementary School.
All right. Well, we can it's definitely getting people to drive more, like you said, because it's an added distance. So we'll add in the report that they should reconsider that restriction and make this an official entrance. Because right now the main entrance, is it this one down here?
The main entrance is the front, where in front of across the, yes, that's the main entrance, or the one actually towards Franklin Avenue. There's another entrance right there. Yes, that's really, those two are the main entrances right there, and the other side.
Yeah, so I can definitely see why people are dropping off illegally here, because I mean, that's what the design is selling them. It's telling them this is where the kids go. So it's encouraging that behavior. Right now, supposedly they're allowed to drop off from here on, but yeah, the design isn't encouraging that. So definitely the report will recommend working with the school district to create an entrance that makes more sense for walking and biking. But the rear entrance is open, right? Can you clarify that?
Yes, the back entrance is open, and it's often overlooked. And so another concern with that, actually, that corner right there, it's also sloping. So that's why I was not sure when there's meetings and mention of the retaining wall. If you go all the way in towards the back of Washington School, if you go down that bridge, that whole side is sloping over. It's actually dangerous in the wintertime because it freezes over. And it's sloped really badly, so it's dangerous for the kids to walk in the back of that, in the back part of that school.
Great, thank you. Peter, did I hear you trying to say something?
It was me. This is Keith. I just wanted to chime in here because I have seen where with Safe Routes to School and TAP applications specifying with these kind of contingency type plans where you want to get an improvement done, but you need to also address an existing retaining wall, or in this case, where something needs to be improved before the ultimate improvement can begin. I've seen that it is eligible, at least in conversation with the DOT, and I've seen some projects kind of take those considerations and allocate funding for it. I couldn't say whether whether it would absolutely work in this case, but it's something that could go into an application and undergo serious consideration from those who review the applications. Yeah, there are a lot of considerations for some of these projects where there are restraints in the right of way, for example, and not everything is so black and white that you know, I think that the allocation of funding is fairly flexible on some of those types of considerations.
All right, thanks, Keith. We are at 5 p.m. exactly. So just a reminder, if you do have any additional comments and questions, please send them to heasley@tcnj.com and have them to us by September 24th, please, because we do want to get this report ready to go. Once we finalize the draft report and JTPA reviews it, and then we send it over to you all at West Orange to make sure it's the report you're looking for. Then we'll make those final edits, and the hope is to have it finalized by the end of October. Is that correct, Dan?
Can I actually have just one more comment made?
Sure.
If that would, so, and I know that you said that in the back entrance would be a good, what is it,
Bicycle Boulevard?
Yeah, Bicycle Boulevard. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting the words. But the Bicycle Boulevard, in that same area, would it even be possible to do or to consider doing a kiss and go lane through the back entrance and fixing that whole little area, because it's sloped and it's angled oddly in the back of Washington? I don't know how, I mean, you know.
Yeah, we can see if we can add it as a recommendation. And then the downside of that is it might encourage more people to drive. And also, you know, if residents here, I'm thinking of like a kiss and go, you know, people would turn in and sort of loop around. That might create some congestion in there. So it might be still best to focus on the bike and walk aspect, but we can definitely see if there's a better area than the current drop off, which is here, which is not that big. And also it backs up onto the main street as well. So yeah, we can see if there's a better solution. So Anne, did I miss anything with the?
No, I think the town will have the report by the first round for their review at the end of October. This probably won't be ready for full public until maybe in November. But I mean, the goal is the end of October, but it may likely end up being in November when the final report is available. But you do have these ideas. I will be sending out the presentation as well as the recording today, and a place for you to submit your comments. So we do thank everyone for participating today, and look forward to additional comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Ann. Thank you, everyone. It was a great presentation.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, thanks all. Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Stay safe.